Thank you for listening to the Redfield Arts Review.
Brought to you by
This house is full of sounds.
My name is Roderick Usher.
The loudest is your heart.
Who's there?
Pounding with fear. The softest is the sound of horror. In this house, terror waits for you in every room.
No, not through that door.
Nevermore. Madness, mystery, imagination. You'll find them all in Edgar Allan Poe's Haunted House of Usher.
Thank you for listening to the Redfield Arts Review. In this episode, Dark Bells, Making Music from Poe, Mark Redfield interviews composer Jonathan Leshnoff and violinist Peter Minkler. Choral music performed by the Baltimore Choral Arts Society. The poem The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe, spoken by Mark Redfield. We begin with Jonathan Leshnoff and Peter Minkler discussing with Mark Redfield how Dark Bells came to be.
It comes to be because I received a grant from the Maryland State Arts Council. I won the Baker Prize, and so I had some money, and I didn't know what to do with it because most people who get this money buy something with it. They'll buy a new cello, they'll buy a truck, they'll buy time to be able to do whatever they do as artists. But I'm happy with what I have. So since the viola is so underrepresented as far as repertoire is concerned, I decided to use the money to commission works for my instrument that would not only live forever, because once they're written, anyone can play them, but that I could play and get to know the composers that I like. And that's where it led me to Jonathan. I had asked some people who had commissioned works from Jonathan how they liked working with him. I liked his music. The BSO had played his Starburst, which was really a lot of fun to put together. And I knew he had written for viola, he had written for chorus, and he had written for orchestra. And at that time he was working on a cantata for chorus and orchestra. So I knew that he knew how to make this happen rather than hiring somebody or asking somebody and this would be their first project. So I knew he had some experience under his belt. And I liked his music. And so as I usually do, I fall into these things. I just asked him one day, well, would you like to compose this piece for viola, chorus, and orchestra? And we just went from there.
Here's composer Jonathan Leshnoff.
The first thing that went through my mind was orchestra, fine. Chorus, fine. And a viola, what? I don't get it. So as I was about to articulate no, Peter jumped in and said, how about this on the works of Edgar Allan Poe? And suddenly that stopped me in my tracks because the work of Poe just begs to be put to sound. And working through that piece, and now in retrospect, the best instrument to represent that is the viola. Its interaction with the choir and how the orchestra could mumble and grumble and scream in reaction to those two powerful forces. So it's become quite an evocative, colorful work.
Dark Bells was composed by Jonathan Leshnoff for solo viola, orchestra, and chorus. The poem The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe was written in 1848, but it was published 1 month after his mysterious death in Baltimore in 1849. When it was published, it was advertised as Poe's last poem. The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe. Here, the sledges with the bells. Silver bells! What a world of merriment their melody foretells! How they tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, from the jingling and the tingling of the bells. Here, the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight from the molten golden notes, and an in tune what a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells, how it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, of the bells, to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarum bells, brazen bells. What a tale of terror now their turbulency tells. In the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright. Too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek out of tune, in a clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, with a desperate desire and a resolute endeavor, now, to sit or never by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells! What a tale their terror tells of despair, how they clang and clash and roar. What a horror they outpour on the bosom of the palpitating air. Yet the ear it fully knows by the twanging and the clanging, how the danger ebbs and flows. Yet the ear distinctly tells in the jangling and the wrangling, how the danger sinks and swells by the sinking or the swelling in the anger of the bells, of the bells. Of the bells, in the clamor and the clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells. What a world of solemn thought their monody compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy menace of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan. And the people, the people, they that dwell up in the steeple all alone, and who, tolling in that muffled monotone, feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls, and their king it is who tolls, and he rolls a paean from the bells, and his merry bosom swells with the paean of the bells. And he dances and he yells, keeping time in a sort of runic rhyme, to the paean of the bells, keeping time, in a sort of runic rhyme, to the throbbing of the bells, to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, and he knells in a happy runic rhyme to the rolling of the bells, to the tolling of the bells, to the moaning and the groaning of the bells.
I remember distinctly Peter handing me a short book, a short anthology of Poe's poems. And I remember he marked a few, just with markings between he and himself. But the way that I work in writing texts for choir, and particularly in oratorios, because I have a few, is that looking at the text, I get this gut reaction. This is going to work or not. I get it almost within 5 seconds. And if I feel something's going to work, I suddenly get colors, sounds. It's a synesthesia almost between all the senses that, oh my gosh, that's going to work. And if it doesn't, if I feel a poem's not going to work or a text is not going to work, it's just like a doormat, so to speak. It does nothing to me. Not that the work itself is not profound, but in terms of my artistic inclination. And so Peter handed me the book, and immediately I found 4 or 5 texts which would work perfectly. And then I get into this part, this meta structure of how to work with 20, 30, 40 minutes and a certain amount of text. Because the last thing a composer wants to do is kind of have a run-on sentence. Like, here's a text, there's a text, there's a text, right? There has to be some overarching form to what I do. I demand that of myself. And so I had this list of 5 poems, and then came the hard work of deciding which to use and how to use it and how to make something coherent and say something. Because that's my mandate as a composer. I want to take the listener on a journey. Where they go, what they feel, that's up to them. But I have to be the one that opens that door so they could explore that. And that's the point where I was at selecting this text. I had to make something coherent. So after a lot of time and contemplation, and that was really the most demanding part, whittling down the text, I came up with a solution that really worked for me. The Bells is in 4 parts, and they start off lightly and innocently and become more and more progressively scary. And to me, that was the perfect framing technique. I said, wow, what happens if I have 5 movements? And in the beginning, I'll take the innocent aspect of the bells, the tinkling bells, the winter, the wedding bells. And I'll use that as a first movement. Then something else will happen in the middle. And towards the end of the composition, I'll come back to the bells. And this time they're the alarm bells. And I take the same themes that I have in the wedding bells, and suddenly they become grotesque. The same musical ideas, the same gestures, and somehow they've been transformed into these dark structures. So once I had that kind of anchor between movements 2 and 4, it's a little technical, but that's how I think, between movements 2 and 4, suddenly the rest of the piece fell into place. Because in terms of drama, I knew that 2 would be light, 4 would be dark, and so 3, that's where I decided to use alone, something stepping back and contemplative. And the El Dorado at the end is in my music, wistful and introspective.
The 3 poems that were ultimately chosen, The Bells, Alone, and El Dorado, all share a common thread in that they can be read as a journey through life, from youth to old age and death. The poem Alone was also published after Poe's death, but was written when the poet was only 20 years old. Alone by Poe.
From childhood's hour I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone, and all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm and the cloud that took the form when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view.
As I said, Alone is one of my favorite poems because in a way it's autobiographical to myself. In a way it's like an autobiography of my own life. And so I find that poem in particular so powerful. And I find the movement within this piece so powerful that it's the easiest and it's the most difficult for me at the same time, because I know the words, I know what's coming, I want to be able to comment on them as they're coming from the chorus, but on the other hand, am I doing enough? Am I being enough in the moment? Am I letting myself go to then have the audience really feel what the words mean?
Indeed, in the first movement, it is a setup movement, and it's only for viola and orchestra, in fact, a very reduced orchestra, because the idea is to set the mood. Essentially, it's 2 or 3 minutes, it's almost like a deep breath, a meditation to go into the work. And it's in a movement like this where I feel so in tune with the viola's character and its deep, rich sound. And the viola itself is so evocative of Poe that it's almost as if Poe's poetry is there, but it's hidden. It's being expressed through the viola. That's not the case in the entire piece. The bells, both movements of the bells that were split up, don't use the viola at all because they're loud. It's even on the happy, lighter side, they're still loud. And I don't want the viola competing with the orchestra. It's movements 1, 3, and 5, where I give the viola space to work with the voices, the women's voices in low register, the men's voices in high register. Not necessarily the most comfortable places to write for choir, but certainly very unusual and very colorful. Those combinations with the viola were quite striking.
So not only the art of composition, but the art of interpretation, of course, is bringing those black dots on paper to life. And that's what I think is what the interpreter's job is. Just like a great poem, it can fall flat if the person saying it or reading it or emoting it, it doesn't make any sense. It's the same with music. There are many performances that I've heard that fall absolutely flat because they do exactly what the composer has asked that's on the page. And there's no part of the interpreter there. It's simply translating from the composer's brain to the audience. And to me, the interpreter's job is to take what the composer has written and make it their own, and then give it to the audience. So you're all sort of a conduit between the composer and what the audience is going to hear. And that's what I've done with Jonathan's music, not only this piece, but other pieces, is that I know him, I've gotten to know him very well, and I respect what he's written. So I don't question what's there. So once you're past questioning, then you make sense of it for yourself and you give it to the audience. And I think that's just as important as to make an... It's just as important to make a great experience for the audience from the interpreter's point of view as well as the composer's. I mean, there are many great composers who you'll hear a performance of and you just say, that was bad, that was awful. And it wasn't because the composer had failed, it's because the person interpreting it had failed. And so to me, that's just as important. And that's my job when I play anyone's music, is to convey a certain sense to the audience that I want them to. And sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't, that's fine. But I know what I'm doing is honest to the core, and that's all you can do.
Peter has been a longtime friend and colleague of mine, and I really admire his playing, and I feel that he really understands what I'm trying to get at. So in addition to working with the viola and Poe on such an intimate match, it's augmented by Peter's sensitivity and his musicality, and particularly how he and I get along and work together creatively.
Poe's poem El Dorado was published toward the end of his life, when the great California gold rush had captured the public's imagination.
Gaily bedight a gallant knight, in sunshine and in shadow, had journeyed long, singing a song in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow fell, as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. "Shadow," said he, "where can it be, this land of El Dorado?" "Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow, ride, boldly ride," the shade replied, "if you seek for El Dorado."
I think that a composer's job is very similar to a pilot, because you have hours and hours of just figuring things out. In the composer's case, perhaps just autopilot for the pilot, and then great moments of terror. And the analogy is that I'll spend months and months, sometimes years, figuring things out, trying things out in my head and on the piano, and scoring things and changing things, and suddenly there it is, 3 days before the performance is the first time I get to hear it. And there's not much room or patience, really, to make major changes. So I think I have a very unique internal way of working, which is that when I'm writing, I don't listen to anything which means I don't listen to music at all. I even on the news, those segments connecting news sections, it just throws me off because I'm always working on something consciously or subconsciously. And so I work from the bigger picture in. First I see the larger structure, and then I work down to the melodies and the harmonies and the actual orchestration. But I do this all alone, without the demon, but alone. And it takes a while, and eventually I get to something that I could show the soloist. Peter made his comments, show the conductor, and then based on those hints that they tell me, I'm able to make the final version. And then I get there, and it's either, oh, they're playing that wrong, or, oh, what did I do wrong? It's one of the two, mostly what did I do wrong? And but I tell you, that experience of listening to your piece come alive is like no other experience in the world, because music is something so unique. It's just dots on paper. It's all it is, right? You could get a computer to play those dots, but it's lifeless. What fascinates me every time is that when I put these dots from my head and I give them to different people, they're always different. And what I hear in each different is wonderful. I may have thought about it this way, and they'll play it that way, and I never thought about it that way. But I'm the composer. And so you know what that means? It means the music's not mine. The creative process is something very, very ethereal. I'm connecting with something much higher, and what I get is a gift. Because if it was absolute, it should be exactly as I heard it. So every performance, every soloist, even with the same soloist, same piece but different days, it takes on new shapes, and I just love that.
I'd like to thank Peter Minkler and composer Jonathan Leshnoff for sharing their thoughts on how Dark Bells came to be, and to the Baltimore Choral Arts Society for the graciousness in allowing me to listen in to their rehearsal of this cantata.
Thank you for listening to the Redfield Arts Review. Please come back again for our next show. The Redfield Arts Review and the original content of this program is copyright the Mark Redfield Company. Shopping for Explosives by Coconut Monkey Rocket, licensed under Attribution Non-Commercial International License. All other content used by permission of the respective rights holders or used for educational and informational purposes.
Hello, this is Caroline Monroe.
And I'm Martine Beswick.
And we're here to tell you about this wonderful and exciting new project that we've both been involved with. It's called Sinbad and the Pirate Princess.
And it's a movie for your ear.
Baghdad. The great city and its citizens are celebrating.
Now, as I am a river to my people.
You must kill her, my handsome and still skeptical Captain Sinbad. The only good pirate is a dead one.
Brace yourself, Captain Bulla! The pirates are upon us! Their ship comes alongside us!
I shall not rest until all of Badra's ships are burnt.
You remind me of only one other swordsman with such skill.
Who?
Me!
What is that in that vial?
This? Simply the blood of a siren mixed into a potion that I now drink.
Look! Look! She changes, Captain!
For you and the people of Zelos, I have complete faith in Sinbad. He's the very man you need.
Hello, this is Caroline Monroe.
And I'm Martine Beswick.
And we're here to tell you about this wonderful and exciting new project that we've both been involved with. It's called Sinbad and the Pirate Princess.
And it's a movie for your ear.
Baghdad. The great city and its citizens are celebrating.
And now, as I am a river to my people.
You must kill her, my handsome and still skeptical Captain Sinbad. The only good pirate is a dead one.
Brace yourself, Captain Bula! The pirates are upon us! Their ship comes alongside us!
I shall not rest until all of Badra's ships are burnt.
You remind me of only one other swordsman with such skill.
Who?
Me!
What is that in that vial?
This? Simply the blood of a siren mixed into a potion that I now drink.
Look! Look! She changes, Captain!
For you and the people of Zelos, I have complete faith in Sinbad. He's the very man you need.